Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome into the Australia's Tabletop Wargaming Network as per usual. My name is ScottyD. It's great to be joining you this evening, and we have got Jack joining us. How you doing, mate?
Very good, Scotty. Yourself?
Yeah, doing well, thanks, brother. Doing well. And we've also got Pete. How you doing, mate?
Excellent, man. Thank you. How are you?
Yeah, going well, going well. So this evening, for everyone in chat, thank you for your patience as we did have to fix a few technical difficulties. We have got the Western Sydney 40k Teams Tournament preview for you guys. This is a Teams tournament happening this weekend in Penrith, New South Wales, where we're going to have some 8-man Teams tournament action, which is very exciting. It's quite rare to see 8-mans outside of the Australian New Zealand Team Championship. So really excited to dig in and talk about it this evening. So for those of you joining us on Twitch, thank you so much for joining us live. For those of you watching this back on YouTube after the fact, we do stream these tournament previews live on our Twitch channel the Monday before the tournament. And so if you are only able to catch, half the stream live, or you come in halfway through and stuff, you're able to catch the rest of it here on YouTube after the fact. And we appreciate all of you guys over on the YouTube side for enjoying our content over there as well. But I reckon let's just jump on into it. So Pete, why don't you just give us a bit of quick background about yourself, how long you've been in the hobby, what armies you play, how you got into TOing and stuff as well, because some people might know, for those of you joining us in chat, Pete's actually been on stream a couple of times at tournaments we've covered, but it's going to be interesting to see Pete running an event this time.
Yeah, so I got into the hobby probably 15 years ago due to my older brothers getting me into it. And yeah, it's been a long time crack addiction, so that's fun. At the moment, I'm doing demons, and I've played twice on your stream as demons.
Mm-hmm.
Otherwise, I have Death Guard, Thousand Suns, my main ones. Yeah, so that's pretty much how I got into it. What armies I played. Yeah.
I think the better question to ask Pete half the time is, what's the army he's held the longest? Because every time I see you at events, like every 3 months or so, it seems you've shifted on to another faction out of nowhere.
I would definitely have to be the demons. I've had them 10 years, I think.
Yeah, nice.
Yeah.
Awesome. We've got Glaves in chat saying that Chris is the better O'Neill.
That's big talk when you've got 90 minutes to discuss that fact. I mean, we can shift the preview to just a one-sided debate if everyone wants.
This is part of the NT. They're rubbish, I hear.
Awesome. Glad to hear you've been in the hobby for a while and playing a couple of different armies, but found your spot with demons. It's great to hear.
Yeah, for now.
So I think jumping straight on as well, one of the other things is I'm super curious about this tournament, especially it being an 8-man teams, because I think there's been ruminations in the scene for a long time about setting up an 8-man teams. As Scotty said, they're very rare. But I'm really curious, like, your motivation behind running the tournament, what its core values are, and as far as you're aware, both I'd be curious as a player and as a TO, the difference between a 5-man and 8-man teams event.
So the motivation was I got bullied by Greg. Greg bullied me for ages to run 8-mans because he wanted to put a bid in for the Australian New Zealand Team Championship, and we couldn't get the place we wanted for the bid. But then after that, we got places for the 8-mans, and so Greg's bullying worked out, and we did 8-mans. The big difference between 8 and 5-man as a player is that obviously the first thing is it's a lot harder to organize 8 players than it is 5. And there's a lot more variation of armies. So instead of going, these are the top 5 performing armies we're going to win, you'll see a lot more of skews, armies based on, I need to kill T Suns, so this is all this does. You will see a lot more of that sort of mindset in 8-mans, and we'll see a lot more funny, janky, sort of off-meta armies. From a TO's perspective, it's going to be a lot of organization, obviously, and trying to have as much information available to everyone is a massive thing. Because, like you said, it doesn't happen. 8-mans is super rare. We are the first one that's open to the public who are doing 8-mans. So trying to get everyone on the same page of how it works, pairings, all that is a lot of work. Why we had to release the players pack so early is because there's a lot of information to cover in it. So the core values is essentially me and Todd got sick of driving ages for events. So we're trying to make a healthy competitive scene in our local area, which happens to be Penrith. So we're trying to have that value at every event. And then with those goals, we aligned ourselves with WTC rulings. So everything on this weekend will be WTC. To penalties, which are quite harsh in WTC, which is going to be interesting to see. The maps, missions, all that is WTC. So we're trying to align ourselves as much as possible with WTC to make the event as fun and as fair as possible for everyone involved.
Yeah. I love the fact that we have an 8-man teams open to the public, because one of the things, obviously, I started playing around the same time you did, Pete, and ATC the Australian Team Championships has always been held in such high regard as one of the major pinnacles in the country for Warhammer. It's similar to Uprising, but just in a different format. And it's so overwhelming to try and explain how to prepare for that if you've never actually seen an 8-man teams event before. This actually gives people the opportunity to explore it as an idea without... It's basically the onboarding for that process. So I'm really excited to see younger teams. It gives an opportunity as well for anyone around the area, and as we've seen, there are multiple states at the event, to bring teams down to actually practice the format, where normally you don't get to practice this format. As you said, this is the first time we've actually ever run it before, so it's been a massive boost to the community.
Yeah, absolutely. And like long-term plans is that it helps Australia as a whole get better prepared for WTC. And then it helps all the other states get better for ANZ. Which is obviously a long-term goal. The more out-of-state players we can get, the better. And we are lucky to have 4 teams from out-of-state at our event.
100%.
It's great to see that. I know I've had some conversations with Dean, the captain for Team Australia, and he was actually trying to encourage some of the Victorian teams at VTC just recently to actually put 2 5-mans together to basically create an 8-man and come up. Didn't come to fruition, but there is that desire from the Victorian scene to also send a team or maybe multiple teams in the future as well, if there's that opportunity, which I think is great that, you know, on the Eastern Seaboard, we're able to get multiple teams from Queensland. We're able to get multiple teams from ACT. Of course, there's multiple teams from New South Wales, but even having multiple teams, like 1 or 2 teams come up from Victoria in future years would be absolutely huge, just for seeing 8-man teams and getting that practice in, particularly at like this time of year as we're heading into, you know, I know New South Wales have just closed their team applications. You know, this time of year is really pivotal for the Australian New Zealand Team Championship. So it's kind of one of those things where state reps have the opportunity to go, hey, we're potentially going to be picking you. So if you want to actually play an 8-man, and you know, be a strongly considered candidate for the team, if they're not within New South Wales, of course, then playing at this 8-man is probably what's going to put you in the best possible way that we can see how you do and report on the teams, you know, and how they actually perform before going into picking their state teams. I think it's really pivotal, but also really encouraging at the same time.
And
yeah, absolutely.
I'll double onto that as well, Scotty, with just 2 core points. One of the interesting things I think I've discussed in the last stream is Australia is small but big, and it can be a pain to actually travel to events. We don't have a lot of events, especially compared to Europe, and it's a real financial burden to travel from. I know WA is a really good example. Like, the reason we hold our largest tournament in this country in Adelaide is because it's the cheapest to fly to for the rest of the country. It's cheaper for a Western Australian to get over to Vegas than it is to Sydney. So that kind of logistics and setting these nodes up so that people can travel if they have the opportunity is great. But importantly as well, beforehand, all teams have really had to measure success is formats, or for players that they wanted to choose for ATC, is formats that aren't 8-man teams. And I know, Pete, you and I were on the New South Wales squad together this year. It's a reality of the game that teams is it's a wildly different format.
Yeah.
And players play very differently. There are some players that are suited to teams in a way that they're not to singles, and vice versa. So giving reps the opportunity to discover that can only make our entire competitive scene stronger.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, 100% agree.
It'll go a long way to making generally everyone who comes and sees this stronger as a team, because you get to see how people play in those situations where you've just rolled 51s and you've lost 1,000 points in your army. How do you come back from that instead of just giving up like you would in the singles?
Yeah, it's a huge part of teams in general, and especially in 8-mans, where you see a lot more flexibility in pairings. By the nature, I mean, approximately you're looking at, give or take, 12% of a team, as opposed to 20, as opposed to 100% in a singles event. Yeah, you are still very valuable, and any player can lose a round or have a bad game, and that can shift things, and that's fine. But managing a team in general, that's another thing I'm really keen to see, is opening up opportunities for people to take on the coaching role, which is something that you can't train particularly well in a singles environment, because we don't allow coaching in a singles environment. And even in a 5-man team's perspective, it's a very bit different ballgame. For every player you add to a team, it gets exponentially more complicated to keep track of how everyone's doing and manage personalities and factions and everything.
Yep.
So.
Yeah, and when you look at, WTC, for example, is probably the closest on an international level that we see. They've got multiple coaches for a team of 8. Like, they've got 3, maybe 4 coaches, which in the context of Australia, to be able to have that opportunity where if someone for New South Wales wants to go for a coach role rather than playing as a part of the team, then they can go, cool, I'm going to go with one particular team. I'm going to be the coach for them. I'm going to do all the running around, checking on the teams and doing that role rather than playing. And so you can get that experience at the 8-mans, much like what you were saying, Jack, where it's a lot easier to get that there rather than, 5-mans. You can do it at 5-mans, but it's not as, there's not as much to do. And then, in singles, it's really hard, to do, because it's on an individual by individual basis rather than you're working together as a team, your team scores are collated together kind of thing. Unless you're trying to, for example, use the ITC team rankings as that way that you're trying to push forward. And so you might pick up someone who's, okay, someone's really hot at this one event. We've got our coach in place. They're going to make sure they've, got their water, they know what's going on with the rest of the team. And so they're trying to get the best possible score for their team to increase their overall team ITC rankings. That's probably the only context you could potentially see it in a singles environment.
Yeah. And one of the things that I'll jump on from personal experience is 3 years ago, I believe, I was the coach for Canberra's ATC team, and I'd never been to ATC before, so I had no idea what it looked like, and that was a fairly standard onboarding coach procedure. You were lucky if you actually picked up a spare member that had experience in the regard. And let me tell you, round 1 was you learned a lot, honestly. You realize that rounds weren't actually won or lost based on your ability to organize and do that. It was actually won or lost on your ability to get your players water and get scores communicated and expectations. Because one of the things with teams, again, similar to 5-mans that we discussed last time, is updating your entire team on the score and what they need from games is huge. This is just, it's the exact same as 5s, only more so. You've now got 8 different scores that you're managing, and you've got more avenues where you can push. You can push minor wins across 7. And that communication level and learning to understand that is something that you cannot get, even in a scrim setting. Like, you really don't develop it until you can present it in the field.
Yeah,
Yeah,
definitely
absolutely.
agree. Definitely agree. Got a few of the folks in chat. We got Palitech, Selt, and By Lemon asking me why am I a rat dog. Goodness me, mate. If you couldn't tell, that's what I was laughing at.
Yeah.
And then Glaves obviously be having a few comments going, F the team, I'm pairing myself 20-0s every round, let's go.
Yeah,
Of course, Glaves is a captain for his team, so...
Look, don't laugh. Like, sometimes that's the way to do it. And at the end of the day, I personally, when I'm on the other team, love to see that. Greatest behavior is watching a captain try and get a 20-0.
Yeah.
Yeah, but Blaze can't push that high. He's pretty short, you know.
All right, so let's jump into talking about some of the details for the tournament as well. So also Glaze just said, "Don't worry, Jack. My matrix has a 20 into you." So there's already the smack talk, ladies and gentlemen, because Jack is playing this weekend as well as a lot of the folks in chat. Lemon's playing, Palitech, Glaves, all these guys are playing, which is great to see so many players actually hanging out in chat with us as we preview the tournament. So let's jump in to a bit of talking about the actual tournament itself. Nope, wrong. Why Discord? Not Discord, OBS. It does a thing. So we've got the players pack up. So just run through some of the details of the tournament. 5 rounds across 2 days. You guys have got 3.5 hours per round. Do you want to kind of talk a bit about your thought process behind picking 3.5 hours for that?
So I wanted to give every person the ability to finish their game to a natural conclusion. And we've seen a lot of times in teams with 2 hours and 45 minutes just doesn't give that. There's always 1 or 2 people who has, 2 turns left. And as much as you can talk it out, you can never actually predict a proper scoring while talking out. So with 8's been a lot more team inclusive, and with that, me and Todd decided to push it to 3.5 hours. Now, obviously, if that is way too long for everyone, we can look at shortening it, but that is roughly the idea of where we wanted. Because at ATC and WTC, they are 3.5 hour rounds. So practice for that team's event or that team's level, knowing that you have that little bit of extra time to think about decisions, play safe, play dangerous, whatever, and mean a big difference between scores.
Yeah, 100%. It also means that you can go and actually dedicate spending half an hour to actually getting your pairings done. Whilst, something that I was actually reading on, funnily enough, when Dean posted up on Team Australia, where it was like, I'm aiming to be a non-playing captain. And some of the people who were commenting mentioned, and he mentioned as well, how the captains and the coaches would go around, and during the pairing process, whoever's not involved go around and sets up the tables and make sure they're set up for the games and all that kind of stuff. So things like that, the players can still help with whilst pairings are being done if they're not needed. So that's the, and then, you get that done within the first half hour. You've still got 3 hours to play a game, which, to put it in a time perspective, that's an hour and a half per player. It roughly equates to, I think the math is about 18 minutes a turn per player turn. So it's a decent amount of time that you have to actually think through and to actually play your games to get into that natural conclusion, which I think in a team's environment like this, where you're wanting to practice, for ANZ TC, potentially WTC, if players are looking to apply for Team Australia, is actually a really good standard to have. But of course, having that flexibility, like you've said, if you find it's too much and players, they've got an hour and a half for lunch, because, most people have breezed through their rounds, and it's like, well, let's, everyone's sitting around waiting for the start of the next round. Everyone's finished lunch. We've got like half an hour until the start. Let's shift forward half an hour and let's get going.
Yeah.
Which I think is great.
One of the other things I want to jump on with that, Pete, just quickly in terms of how the tournament will run, is I know with ATC and similar to WTC in 8-man teams, there are specific rules as to who can communicate between tables on a team. Does the Players Pack have a thing around that, or is that?
I would say that it is under the players, or maybe not actually, because I put all the FAQs in there, but it doesn't. It might be under player penalties or clock rules.
Okay.
To be honest, I hadn't fully read them, so I'm not 100% sure. But I'd say if it's not obnoxiously annoying each opponent, it's fine.
It's
Your teammates can talk to you, but not interfere or personally coach during the game.
Yeah, a really important part with any team's tournament is even though you're on teams together, you're not allowed to influence any decision in a game. Even if you notice a mistake, the correct answer is to call a TO over independently.
Absolutely.
And if you are going to communicate with a player on your team, it should be able to be heard by the other player at the table.
Yeah.
Those are the WTC standards, so just be aware of that going into the tournament. Again, a lot of this can sound very imposing. This oh, I don't want to make a mistake. It's fine. It's teams. It's casual. We understand that for a lot of people, this is their first encounter with the format, but just keep it in mind from the sake of the tournament that this is another thing to work and look at and manage.
Yeah. And just touching on that, it's why me and Todd and I are there. We are TOs. We are there to help everyone. So no one should feel uncomfortable coming to get us. Even if it's for some little annoying thing, we've given plenty of time in the rounds. And Todd's a bit funny looking, but we're both approachable fellas.
I take Todd over you every day, mate.
Yeah, so I definitely encourage players, if there is something that seems off, you get a TO, because we are there to help you and we want to make sure that everyone has a good, clean, fair weekend.
Yeah, 100%, which is awesome. So we do have the Players Pack page up that you were just referring to, Pete, to talk about the different FAQs and stuff. So you've got the WTC FAQ, the Army rules, how WTC does charges as well, because I know they've got a few different things there compared to traditional 40k, just straight out of the core rulebook. Base sizing document as well, which is, I think that's actually really valuable. Making sure that players are able to easily find, okay, what base sizes do I actually need to have? Because Games Workshop have been changing base sizes left, right, and center recently. And so having that to reference is really solid. Chess clock rules as well. I know a lot of players nowadays do like to play with chess clocks. On stream, for example, we'll be using chess clocks. And so that'll just, it's easy to pull those rules up. So players are able to be aware of that. And then also the player penalties as well for interference and stuff like that. And player decorum and all those things. So it's good to have those in the Players Pack as well. We do have...
Just on that, I would recommend everyone to read the players' penalties rules, just because when I was reading them, it seemed very harsh, but it is on the point where we will be enforcing that. So go ahead, read that, and make sure there's no misunderstandings, because it is heavily penalized in WTC.
Yep. Then we have got the pairings method. So basically, if you're not too familiar with teams, the way that teams pairing works is each team will secretly secretly put up a defender each. Then their opposing team will put forward 2 attacking forces to potentially be picked by the defender to go into it. And then they reveal them simultaneously. So you've got 2 games that you're actually figuring out the pairings for simultaneously. Then one team will pick secretly pick which one they are going to be taking, and then the one they're refusing, and then both teams will do that. Then you reveal which army you're wanting to go into your defender, and then I believe I'm just reading this now. The team with the table choice token lets his defender choose the table first. So whoever wins the roll off to determine who has that token their defender gets the first table pick, then the other team's defender gets the table pick, and it keeps on alternating like that until you get through to, you do that for rounds 1 through 7, and then games 1 through 7, and game 8 is literally the 2 remaining factions in the team. I believe that is the synopsis of the pairing. Feel free to correct me if I've misinterpreted that.
No, it is. And one of the things is Scotty managed to describe it in about 30 seconds. The complexity behind this is honestly the reason why we all love teams. Because this is where Pete was talking earlier about how teams have these weird interfering points. And I feel like this is kind of the point to talk about. Is in 5-man teams, there's attackers and defenders, and you try and jockey for positions. In 8-man teams, you can have lists dedicated to just trying to fight the Thousand Suns player that you think is going to be in every list. And they can create absolute chaos because as the pairings go through, resources get limited, wires can get crossed. There's so many different combinations of pairings that can occur in this. And the pairings are often a lot more extreme because we're saying skew lists. So 20s happen. And that's okay. Sometimes you actually want to pair a 20 into one of your defenders because it opens up the rest of your matrix. It opens up better pairings for everything else. And this is something that for anyone, like captains, teams, whatever, anyone who is coming to the event, I highly suggest practicing this a couple of times because you'll see what happens. You'll see how different it becomes based on 2 choices. Like if one choice flips, the entire matrix can flip.
Yeah, 100%. And to what we were talking about a bit earlier, where yes, you can have one game go to you throw someone under the bus is the common terminology, where you basically go, this is going to be a red for you in terms of matchups. You're going to likely get 0 points, but try and scrape out 1 or 2 points if you can. And from that, it then might enable a lot more, yellow or light green or green matchups for the rest of the team, which then they might be able to get 12 plus points on consistently across the board, which means you might be able to eke out that draw, or you might even, if you get a couple of 14s, couple of 16s, rather than just, 12s and 13s, you might actually end up winning the round, because I believe the threshold you've got to get is 80. Oh, is it 86 or it's 96? I can't remember which one it is.
I'm pretty sure it's 86. It might be a bit high. It might be a bit higher.
Yeah.
No, 96 feels like a win because there's a fairly large draw bracket.
Yes.
Pretty sure there's about a 5 or 6 point draw bracket in there.
Yeah, that's what I have a feeling it's around that like high 80s mark. Because then, there's that 10, I think it's a 10-point window in the middle of win to loss, because for those not familiar with WTC, every game scored on a 20-point differential system. So if 10-10 is where you're within 5 victory points of each other, and then for every 5 difference, the winner gets 1 more point and the loser loses a point. Pally in chat has said 86 is a win, I think, if I remember correctly. So 86 might be that threshold.
Yeah.
It's around that.
It appears you may be having some mic issues there, but
Yeah, I think we just lost Scotty.
Yeah, I'll cut in the meantime. You back? Yeah. I'll cut in the meantime. So, even talking from a coach's perspective, if you're curious about these pairings, and I mean, they sound Diluvian, they sound like forbidden and really complicated. Just practice them with your mates, and more importantly, if you want to start looking into coaching and stuff, this is the biggest thing one of the coaches will end up doing. Like, I'm a math geek, I'm a stats geek. I love pairings. because I've seen so many teams events won and lost on pairings, and 8 missions, like Pete, you can attest at ATC, people set traps for each other. Like people set traps that don't become revealed until 4 different pairings down the line here. And you realize that your one defender's staring at 2 20-nils and the other 2 are green matchups, and all of a sudden there's 50 points at the end of the pairings matrix that you weren't accounting for. So keep an eye every round. I find having an Excel sheet with all the loose pairings, even if it's just colors, and just deleting them as you go, can often give you an indicator of the good, the bad. And most of the teams are willing to reach out for advice afterwards. So if you have one of those rounds where you're kind of staring and shuddering, going, what just happened to us in pairings? Ask the other captain. Like, this is about learning. We want to show, like, people love talking about this stuff. And I really want this event, like as a player personally, I really want this event to be like a melting pot of ideas.
Yeah, 100%. And I think we are going to see that. With the interstate attendance, it's not just going to be everyone from New South Wales. So it's going to enable a lot of ideas to start percolating, not just for New South Wales, but for ACT and Queensland as well, which is great to see. So there's just more continued about the pairings methods, and there is the a visual explanation of how the pairings work in the players pack as well, which is great. In terms of the schedule, you've got your modeling requirements in terms of WYSIWYG and all that modeling stuff, 3D printed or alternate minis. Obviously you got to ask for clearance and stuff, and such as well. And then we start to get into the actual schedules of the day. So day starts at roughly 8:45. I've had a look. The venue doesn't open till 9 a.m. Or are they opening
Technically,
early?
the venue doesn't open till 9 a.m.
Yeah.
Todd and I get in at 8:30. Todd and I are going in the night before to set everything up. There'll be one room that we were not allowed into because they have another function there, which is whatever. But then Todd and I can get in at 8:30, and then because we're essentially separate from the main venue or the main hall, we'll be able to let people in around that 8:45 to 9 o'clock.
Great. And then we get straight into round one, which round one is mission-wise. We are looking at Tipping Point, Fog of War, and Linchpin. Now, this is a great mission in my opinion. I like this. I like this combo. Fog of War, where it's everyone has cover, and I believe it's also where you can't use core stratagems during round one. Linchpin. For those who don't know, Linchpin's been capped now, so it's at max of 15 points per turn for scoring instead of being the uncapped version. So you get 3 points for holding your home. If you hold any in no man's land whilst you hold your home, it's 5 points per. If you don't hold your home, then they're 3 points per instead. And then Tipping Point is your staggered hammer and anvil style deployment.
Yep. It's got to give the world something to like.
Yeah, it's interesting. It's interesting you like this one, Scotty, because this mission has always had blowout written all over it for me. Like, this is a mission that some armies just adore in a way that I can't possibly understand. I mean, Pete, you mentioned Worldies. Any army that's willing to scuff over the midboard loves Linchpin, because you have to walk out. And if everything's got cover, it allows... Yeah. Perma cover round one as well. No core strats round one means that certain armies just don't have a couple of like those cute little mechanics they tend to work off. Notably things like heroic intervention round one.
Yep.
You can randomly pull some stuff. You can pull some fast ones there. So keep that in mind in pairings. This is one of those missions where I would not be surprised if you have players on your team going, so I thought this was like about a 10 and this is getting bad quick. Like, thankfully it's capped now, so it's nowhere near as much of a blowout as it used to be. You used to be able to like walk up on 10-3 and score 45 points.
Yeah, which is kind of wild. Yes. And I think also when you combine this with the change of secret missions where you can't score on the bottom of 5, like you can't just go, cool, I'm going to take a secret mission, I'm going second, I'm just going to hold all 3 in the middle, and I'm going to score 35 points. You can't do that now. or I think it was like
Yeah.
38, or if you held your opponent's home, I think it was 43 you could get on this mission at most. But, you know, you're capped at 20 on primary, so it'd only be max 40 in one round, which is ridiculous. So it's great that they've actually made that change for secrets as well. It means they're much less viable. So yeah,
they're a little less volatile as well, because in
Mm.
teams, a secret mission used to represent 4 whole differential points.
Mm-hmm.
And I mean, we talked about it since the start of 10th. Like, the threat of a gambit or a secret mission ruining a team round exists in players' heads. So it's something that can get in there. And sometimes your captain or coach might turn around to you and be like, here's the deal, I need you to take a secret mission and I need you to score it, figure it out.
Yep.
And there's so many armies that can score secret missions so easily and so well. It's quite scary.
Yep.
Like Hyperphase, Grey Knights, just anything they'd be like, oh no, my Warlord's 3-inch deep strike on your home field.
Eldar.
Locked in, there's 20 points. Yeah, like, it's very scary from a team's perspective, I think.
Yeah, definitely agree. So moving on, we've got the lunch break for 45 minutes, which is a decent sized lunch break. You know, it's good. Allows people a bit of downtime, get some food, particularly if you finish your game a bit quicker and you're not necessarily needed for your team, then you can actually go and grab lunch earlier. Means you can have a bit more downtime in between games, which I think is great. Round number 2. Sorry, Jack.
Pro tip as well for lunch quickly. If you've got a player who's actually out towards like an hour to the end of the round, see if you can get them to go and organize lunch orders or small things like that, because that can take a lot of pressure off an 8-man team.
Yeah, that kind of stuff, 100%. Round number 2, we've got Crucible of Battle, which is the angled hammer and anvil. It's not the staggered. With Raise Banners and Burden of Trust. Now, Jack, what are your thoughts on this mission? Because I'm a bit mixed.
Burden, like, I haven't played a lot of Pariah Nexus, if I'm being honest, but Burden of Trust is the one that Burden of Trust is the servo skills for me.
Mm-hmm.
It's nowhere near as bad as servo skills. Make no mistake, that's grievous defamation on Burden. I still don't like it.
Mm-hmm.
I still think it and the round 1 mission are both ones that just have a lot of moving parts to go and score, and they favor in a weird way. Like that action mechanic again just encourages a mid-board lock. And there are some armies. AdMech is a brilliant example. Have fun trying to play AdMech on Burden of Trust. There's weird armies that work for it and some armies that actually really struggle with it. And so that's something you need to identify in your pairings matrix is actually, I can't really score Burden of Trust. Yep. Or if I'm doing it, it's on my backfield objective and I'm basically just clutching for points.
Yep. The interesting note is having Raise Banners with it, so it encourages you to go out, do actions on the objectives, whilst also guarding them simultaneously. So you probably go, I'm going to guard with this unit as well as do an action. They're already there anyway. They might be out of position. So it gives them something to do. So then you're still getting some points from it. I think I do actually, funnily enough, agree with you, Jack. I think Burden of Trust is not a particularly great mission. I think if you were to pick between Ritual, Supply Drop, and Burden of Trust, I would honestly be leaving Burden of Trust out of the field. I would much rather play the Supply Drop or Ritual compared to that, at least personally, because I typically play a lot of mixed arms style. So I got a little bit of combat, got a little bit of shooting. I don't mind playing in the midfield, but at the same time, I don't want to be stuck there the entire game. I kind of want to be able to manipulate the board state, you know, maybe feint a little bit, bring my opponent in on one side, and then counter offense. That kind of stuff. You know, a bit of Eldar trickery for Marines, funnily enough. But yeah, it'll be interesting because I think you're right that it will cause some swings. Some armies will absolutely excel at this. I think armies that will take a lot of infiltrators and scouting units will be able to get onto at least one, if not two objectives turn 1 and be able to go guard just straight up. And they'll do, and we're going to do banners, and they'll get some secondary points in addition to also getting some primary points and just starting to rack that up really quick. Burden of Trust is that mission where it favors first turn compared to a lot of the other ones.
It's the favor first turn that does get to me, but one of the other things Burden does a really good job at is armies that love trading. Love Burden of Trust so much because it's all about setting these, like, I'm going to burden here, here, and here. I'm either going to score like 1,000,000 points or you actually have to commit units out.
Yeah.
There are also some armies that are weaker on the action-based missions. Knights is a really good example. A lot of Knight armies, I mean, Chaos Knights less so because they tend to pack 1,000,000 War Dogs, but actually keep count of how many units in your opponent's army can action, because that can severely restrict how they work. There are certain missions where, like, you may just actually end up in a situation where you have a choice between trying to kill your opponent off their objectives or trying to score your own. So definitely things to keep in mind is think about your opponent's army. Think not only how are you scoring the action, but how would they score the action? Because I think with Burden, it's often we see ours, but we don't see our opponents.
Yeah. I guess, Pete, why don't you chime in here? What were your thoughts with this mission?
Well, Burden, you can't guard turn 1. So all the scouts and stuff, they can move wherever they want, but they're not scoring much. The Razor Banners, you can only do it on one objective per thing. So in my mindset, it is pushing people to all objectives, because you can guard multiples after turn 1. Then if you don't want to get blown out, you have to go through all 3 of them. Same with banners. If you want to get that extra point or extra 2 points, 3 points, you have to then go to all the objectives. There's been games where 1 or 2 points is 1 or 2 team points, which can make a big difference in 8-mans. So in my mind, this one forces people to not just sit there behind the gun line and go, cool, I'm going to table you and score late game. You can't really do that on this one.
Yep. Kind of that differentiator, like to kind of separate the pack a little bit.
Yeah.
It's actually the opposite of priority targets in a weird way, because priority targets historically in teams is a mission where getting a 13 on priority targets sometimes felt like a miracle because both players had access to really comfortable scoring outlets. This is a bit of the opposite. Both players actually have to scrap for it. And honestly, Pete, I'm really glad you're actually putting a couple of these more spicy options in, because I like playing these missions. I think one of the things that, again, as a community, as we build up, is we have to get a bit more comfortable with these absolute hairballs of missions.
Yeah, 100%
If it
agree.
forces people to think, that's why we're there.
Yes.
I want people to think about it, how the game plays, how to get points over the turns, just that sort of stuff.
Yeah.
Make people really think about the game itself rather than I can table this person and I can't.
Yeah, exactly. So Jack's just had to step away a minute for those in chat wondering. But for round number 3, we've got Hammer and Anvil with Smoke and Mirrors. Now, remind me, Smoke and Mirrors, that's one of the strat reserve ones. I just can't remember which one it is.
So after deployment, you can put, I believe it's 1 unit into strat reserve or 2 battle line.
Okay, and the cap
I could be wrong about the 2 battle line parts.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think I might be wrong about the battle line part, but it's definitely 1 unit can go back into reserve.
Yeah, and that's the one with the cap of 500 points, correct?
Yep.
Yeah, cool.
Yep.
Okay. And then supply drop for the mission. So, really interesting. Hammer and Anvil is pretty straightforward. So, means that everyone's playing on the short table edges. Basically,
which is really good for setup. Really good for setup day 1, Pete. I'm very glad you picked 3 Hammer and Anvil missions on day 1 because it keeps the terrain. It keeps the terrain relatively consistent. That's brilliant.
Yeah.
Oh,
The players who are playing on stream mightn't be too happy with me.
Look, as a famed Eldar player, I hate playing on Hammer and Anvil because I try and turn every game into Hammer and Anvil, and I don't like starting like it.
That is very
See,
fair.
I'm just out against the elder players. You know, all the elder players at this event, I'm just out to get
All one of them. Spoiler alert.
Yeah.
But yeah, I actually like this mission. Like I again, as we were just saying, supply drops have been one of those. It can be very hit and miss. It can be very swingy. I think Hammer and Anvil is probably the best deployment for it. And the reason why I think that is because all of the objectives, they're on the center line. So it's also you start a fair way in on the table, your opponent starts a fair way in. It's not like you're having to go from the right hand side on a long table edge to the left hand side objective that's like 48 inches away. You know, you don't have to get there in like, you know, booking it every turn with your key units to try and get firepower onto it. It's like, okay, cool. I actually don't have to deviate too much to actually get onto that objective. So I actually do like supply drop on Hammer and Anvil. The interesting thing is having smoke and mirrors where you can put a unit into strat reserves can lead to a lot of fainting with deployment, which is quite nice because then it can go, okay, cool. I'm going to put this down. It's, you know, I mean, it could happen. I'm just going to use this as an example. I'm going to put Magnus down first. 100% faint. And just go, I'm going to put him into strat reserves. Bring him on turn 2 on one table edge and go, sup. Now, I'm fully aware that Magnus is not great when you do not deploy him on the board. Turn 1.
I'll give you a better example. So I'm playing Triple Prism at the event. Fainting a single Fire Prism into Strat Reserve is absurd. Smoke and Mirrors is one of those missions that I lick my lips on. I'm just like, okay, well, you can choose to respect a Fire Prism or 3 of them. And then if I decide that you have, I pick it up.
Mm-hmm.
And think about it. Like, walk up to the table. In Smoke and Mirrors, you should always Smoke and Mirrors. There should, unless your opponent has put everything out in the open, there should be at least something your army wants to just go, yep, I'll send that up into the air.
Yep.
And create that as part of your game plan, especially with supply drop. Again, I loved your comments on Dawn of War, Scotty. I am so sick of that corner Dawn of War deployment supply drop mission because sometimes it felt like cheating. It felt like, oh, I rolled the one next to me, that's fine. And supply drop counter to the other 2 missions is one that, from a team's perspective, going around to your team on turn 3 and being like, hey, how does it look for scoring 20 points on that last turn? Because points can come out of nowhere in supply drop.
Yep.
And you can see big swings. Like I know at ATC, for example, I was playing against Guard and I thought I had it until turn 4. And I had to scramble for a coach and be like, actually, I'm going to go down by 4 more points than I thought I would. So do we have it? Do we not? Acknowledge that that's part of the game as well as a player. But these are things to start considering. Again, those macro plays of any mission where you can score a lot of points out of nowhere, have a plan. Have a plan for what happens if it goes wrong. See if you can start noticing your opponent pick it up.
Yeah, definitely agree. And Pete, what were your thoughts with this one?
Well, I love supply drop. You know, my last event I ran it 2 times, the 3 events, 3 rounds, so that was fun. Smoke and Mirrors, I think, is a fun little sort of almost a gimmick. Like you said, you'd be like, oh, you know, come target this thing. Nope, bye. But that again, that forces people to think about deployments, that sort of stuff. Which again, I want people to think about game, where it's happening, and what's happening in it. Hammer and Anvil. Well, I think I was trying to do one of each deployments because I was lazy. But yeah, I liked this mission. It didn't seem to be like any massive sort of favoritisms to any side. It was a fairly consistent scoring game, a bit more of an honest one than some of the other ones.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, cool. All right.
But still, all 3 missions have a lot of player expression, which I really like in teams.
Yeah.
Like, I like the missions that encourage that.
Yeah. The important thing is it's been on screen the entire time. Round 3 finishes. Like, if people go this late, it's gonna be like oof. But it finishes at 8:15 at night.
Yeah.
I was commentating the last team's event in Sydney, and we were finishing around 9, and it was an exercise of players are trying to stay awake. And on supply drop as well, like this is going to be a mission where you need to be there for those final couple of turns. Like,
Yeah.
there's going to be as much of a physical game as there is a mental with this
Yeah.
one.
And it
It is
also
another issue.
you go, Pete.
It is another issue with the 3.5 hour rounds that the days are long and quite long. So that is something that Todd and I want to see if we can't get away with for our next events in the future, or even it's something we need to rein back in and be like, okay, well, people can't or don't want to be playing Warhammer that much all day. So we got to find out a happy medium of giving people enough time and also understanding that not everyone wants to spend 10.5 hours in game.
Yeah. I think it's also with not having a break between rounds as well, rounds 2 and 3, it really means that if you get even 10 minutes, 15 minutes at the end of your game, if you finish 15 minutes before the end of the round, you use that to recover. If you go up against a player who hasn't had that opportunity, it's going to make the world of difference in your game. So 100% agree that it's going to be a thing of player endurance as well.
And once again, communicate with your coaches. Like, acknowledge that fact on your team. If you've got a player who's just had a really rough game, handing them a coin flippy, like, we don't know how this is going to go, may not go as well as you want because they're going to be tired. And be honest about
Give them
them.
a beer.
Yeah, well, depends on what you want out of them.
Yeah, definitely
Get their
agree.
opponent a beer.
I mean, it is at the Penrith RSL, which I did forget to mention. So, licensed premises.
Yep.
All right. So
get smashed, I guess.
well, of course, you don't want to get thrown out of the venue, so you don't play for your team, right?
Yeah. Smash respectfully.
Yeah, within the bounds of code of conduct.
Yes.
Yeah.
So now moving on to day 2, exact same start time, so 8:45 to 9 o'clock in the morning, which is great. Then we get into round 4. We got Crucible of Battle for the deployment again with Inspired Leadership. This one is basically Prior Nexus's version of Chilling Reign, because it does, depending on the matchup, I will say that, depending on the matchup, it tends to not have much of an impact. If you go into, say, something like Tyranids or Chaos Knights, it will have a bit more of an impact there, whereas in others, it might not as much if they don't have a lot of battle shocking mechanics.
Remind me
It's
what
also
it
really
does,
good
Scotty?
demons.
Demons as well. Sorry, Jack?
Remind me what it does.
I believe it's +1 leadership to units within 6 inches of the Warlord.
Yes. Yeah. So if you have demons and stuff with all their shenanigans of coming back or healing wounds and stuff, if you have them in their middle of the Warlord, it's just like, oh no, I have a 4+ leadership now on Bloodletters.
And Palitech has just corrected me. It's 9 inches of the Warlord.
Yeah.
9, okay.
So it's a bit of a it's a decent sized bubble.
Yeah, I mean, again, there are some armies that treat this as not Chilling Reign. There are some armies that treat this as Chilling Reign. See how you go with that. Some armies get down to lead 5 base. Like I know Eldar, for example, Dark Eldar, pull an entire
Custodes.
army, Custodes.
Yeah.
It can be a bit of a weird flip in a bizarre turn of phrase, but I wouldn't be banking on.
And then
It's something you don't bank on, but it is something that can come up against NIDs and stuff.
But remind your opponent when you win the game because it was Inspired Leadership.
And then the primary for this one is Purge the Foe. Classic 8th edition missions. A good one to start the day with, to be honest.
Now we're getting into the good stuff.
Yeah, day 2 I wanted to keep it a little bit more simpler because it's already after a long day. People might be tired, whatever. So the simpler for day 2, the better.
Yeah, 100%. So for those not familiar with Purge the Foe, you get 4 points for killing one or more opponent's of your opponent's units during turn 1, and then turn 2 onwards, you get 4 points for killing 1 unit, 4 points for holding 1 objective. You get 4 points if you hold more than your opponent, and if you get 4 points if you kill more than your opponent. So you can get a max of 16 victory points per turn. So you can actually basically cap out by, if you get 16 for 3 consecutive turns, there's 48 points on primary by turn 4. Like, it can be pretty big.
And by contrast, Purge is another one that can actually be very balanced in a weird way. Like, kill more, hold more means that players can actually scrap a hell of a lot of points. And certain armies all of a sudden become a pain on Purge. Like, I don't know if it's in our preview, but I know there's a 3 Lancer Canis Rex list out there. That on Purge is just an exercise of I'm just gonna pencil you in for a hell of a lot of kill more.
Yep. Or there's also the World Eaters with 2 Corn Lords of Skulls.
Yeah, and Angeron. Yep. Again, just these, keep that in mind when you're pairing. Some armies will naturally be able to pick up a kill. Like, can you pick up a kill turn 1? Can you pick up a kill every turn consistently? That's a question you should be asking. If you can, and if you can hold one, importantly, you can hold your backfield, then you can actually scrap up 8 points for 4 rounds.
Yeah.
Potentially an extra 4 points in there as well, which is all of a sudden, 36 primary?
Yeah.
So that's pretty respectable just to begin with. So this can be tight, and this can also be an absolute blowout.
Yeah. It depends on pairings, because if you go into an army that you can kill units very easily of your opponents, and your opponent can't kill units of yours very easily, then it's going to be a swing. Whereas if you're able to trade effectively into each other, then it's going to be a very tight game. It's going to come down to secondaries more than likely rather than primary. Because if you're able to just consistently score 12 points, like even if you score, kill 1 unit, hold 1, and a couple of turns you hold more, a couple of turns you kill more instead, and you alternate that, there's still 48 points by the end of the game. Like, if both players can do that, that means it just comes down to the other 40 points of secondaries.
Yeah, I really, again, I played a lot of 8th Ed. Some players may not have. This was what we used to play. It was just Purge the Foe every round, and going second in Purge the Foe is also a huge deal. So another thing to check with your players at the start of a round is who went second, because second has so much control over kill more. Because you get to start your turn knowing how much you need to kill to get kill more or deny. Weird things with teams, again. Double checking who went first, who went second, and who actually has these weird little control metrics.
100%. And to buy Lemon's comment in chat, yeah, good old ITC. Those, I believe it was just before the Champions missions came out where they had all the selectable secondaries. I remember modifying those ITC missions for the first Australian ITC championships. I remember modifying them to a differential.
Originally it only had that, and I believe the 3 tertiaries or whatever. It was First Blood, which
Slay
was
the
a freebie.
Warlord and Line
Slay the Warlord and Linebreaker.
Yep.
And then they introduced secondaries for the first time. And it's why you get a couple of us, like older 40k players, who love Purge.
Yep.
Because we played way too many games of Purge the Foe, just in a different edition.
Yep. I'm even used to editions before that where it was basically, cool, you either hold objectives or you kill type of thing. So, or if you played older WTC formats, a tangent a little bit, it was where you had kill points, you had primary objectives, which was the primary mission, and then you had Maelstrom cards on top of that during 7th. Wild.
Don't say those names ever again.
But yeah, anyway, moving on. So we got 45 minutes for lunch again. I mean, keeping those lunch times consistent is great. Round 5, you've got Search and Destroy, Prepared Positions, and Take and Hold. So Prepared Positions is for battle line units. You can go to ground or heroically intervene for 0 CP. And Take and Hold is your traditional hold 1, hold 2, hold 3, get 5 points per to a max of 15. To Pete's point earlier, finishing with a relatively easy mission.
Yep, trying to keep it simple because it's a lot of Warhammer in 2 days. And ideally, we finish a bit earlier than the end time suggests because it is a simple mission. And the award ceremony can start earlier because I fully understand that we have people who live in Canberra and Queensland who want to get home, 2 days away from home. It's just like, oh, cool, let's go home, let's relax
Mm.
and do that. So I want to try and get people out earlier because everyone wants to go home.
The other benefit of a simple mission on the end of the day is we're gonna have a top table, and you want a nice simple mission that really shows the difference between player skill.
Yeah.
Like, imagine if an entire team's tournament came down to all deploy servo skulls, and you sitting there being like, well, if one team rolls 6 first turns, then congratulations.
Mm.
It means that player skill will shine on that final round. Because I'm a firm believer as a player that if we make that final table, I don't want it to be random at that point. Like, that is a bit of a clash of heads. So, really like it for both reasons.
What are your thoughts for this
Next
one,
time
Pete?
I'll put yeah, like Jack said, it's a very easy round. It's clear cut. It does really force the players to show who's better as a player thing, rather than, oh, I went second, and the last turn I'm going to score 30 more points than you did. So this will force top tables to clash it out with players' skill rather than who goes first, who goes second.
100%.
Yeah, and yeah, like it's easy. So it's
Jack to do his pairing
a good one to finish on, in my opinion. I always like it when the last round of big events are easy because there's less thinking involved, there's less setup, there's just, it's a smoother way to finish the event, in my opinion.
100%.
Yeah, for sure. All right, so when we get into looking at the deployment maps, of course, every mission has got specified WTC deployment maps. So for just, I'm not going to go through all of them because that we'd be here for hours. To kind of talk through what each kind of group, each round will have, they'll have the same number of tables, but by looks, it's 2 light tables. You've got 1, 2, 3, 4 medium. You've got 1 heavy and 1. I thought just 2 heavies, not any of the super heavy ones.
So super heavies are sort of mixed in between mediums, heavy, and lights.
Yeah.
Or the super Ls, sorry.
Yes.
Just because that then changes. Instead of going, oh, I want 1 defender on a heavy table with the super ruins every single time, it forces people that table pick matters. It's not just, I want heavy 2 because that's where the super L is. It's, can I stage on a medium with Ls, or can I not? So it, in my opinion, it forces table pick to be a bit more conservative and more important in the game, rather than just, I'll take anything.
100%.
But yeah, every map has 10 ruins, 2 crates. Every round has 4 mediums, 2 lights, 2 heavies.
And terrain does matter. The other one to look at, I know we were making a bit of a meme about it at Teams, is where you can fit land raiders, where you can fit certain big tanks. There are some boards where if you're playing like 13 War Dogs, you end up in a traffic jam. Like, and so being aware, even as a player, if you know, or if you're an angle shooting army, like if you know you're going to look for firing lines, figuring out what tables have good firing lines, what ones don't, have a look. Even if you're not completely sure, you'll probably notice a couple of variations. Like there are some medium tables that are pretty chunked up and some that actually have pretty open firing lines, like a light table.
Yeah, definitely does. You know, it changed on every round because also they're malleable towards the deployments as well. So WTC have actually created every single one of these maps for that specific deployment. And typically they do it for specific missions as well, but that's malleable for every year because, of course, we have different mission packs come out at the halfway point of the year, right? So they're always like, this might be the deployment, but then the missions might change, a deployment might get taken out, so they'll have to scramble. So, but typically WTC has never really enjoyed Dawn of War deployment. They're not particularly fond of sweeping engagement either. So that's also something that they tend to steer towards more the short end deployments rather than the long table edge as well. So that is looking through all the different map packs. They're all in the players pack, so everyone has access to these as well, which is great. You can pull them up on your phone. You can actually see. They're also, I will actually note, I actually love that they're actually on the tabletop Battles app version where it's got the inch grid behind it as well, rather than the half-inch grid that WTC have used previously. I actually really like that you've added that version in, Pete.
Yeah, that was 100%
All
on
planned.
design.
All planned.
Yeah.
See it on his face that entire time.
Yeah. I cannot tell you how long I spent on the terrain. It was a nightmare.
Yeah.
I still made massive mistakes. I've had people message me like, why is there no building here? I'm like, there should be a building there.
Yeah.
Get out to the Queensland boys.
Also, again, other quick tips for teams. Print these off.
Mhm.
Have a set of them. Or have them easily accessible in their own document. Because trust me, when you're trying to figure out what the difference between heavy table 1 and 2 is on the fly, it can be a pain. That's actually what often eats up into time.
With that, when we set up, we will have our tables designated to be heavy 1, heavy 2. Like, it'll be map 1, it'll be table 1. So, there'll be rows and stuff. So, it'll be table 1, map 1. Table 1, map 2. So, then you don't have to worry about which heavy is which. It's just, cool, I'm on 6, I'm going to that one.
Yeah.
It's also more for pairings.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah,
making sure, even if you can just put down a little card that says this is what table that's on. Or if you've once you've paired everything off, make sure that the players just put their armies at the table or something so that you sort that out.
Yeah.
Those are the things that as a team will save you time and will make sure your players are as refreshed as they can be.
Yeah, for sure. So that basically covers it in terms of the players pack and such. So Jack, do you want to start us with jigging into some of the finer details?
Yeah, so hi, it's me, your friendly neighborhood ex-math teacher talking about meta breakdowns. My favorite thing in the world. So, in terms of the meta breakdown for the event, we have, keep in mind as well, no team can take more than one faction, so we won't see as much of a massive skew each way. We have 9 players playing Space Marines, which is 9.4% of the meta, 3 Space Wolf players, 2 Adeptus Astartes, 2 Blood Angels, 2 Dark Angels, so very varied Space Marines, which I'm kind of surprised at, to be honest.
I'll add in with Adeptus Astartes, there is 1 Salamander playing Firestorm. There is 1 Ultramarine in there
playing
as well.
Gladius?
Playing Gladius.
Yeah, I believe so.
From memory, it was Gladius,
Yeah.
All 3. We've also got a bit more of a meta breakdown as well going into it. So one of the other really cool things is all the Space Wolves players are playing exactly what you expect. It's Wolf Jail.
Shocker.
Yeah, I know. Like, absolute shock to everyone involved. All Blood Angels are Liberator Assault Group. I personally don't know what that is. I haven't actually caught up with the Blood Angels.
It
so if
is
anyone has
the Sons of Sanguinius Detachment. But I think let's jump through the meta breakdown first, because I've got it actually as an overlay on stream for everyone to view. So we'll unpack that after this.
So Imperium in general, 25 players, 26% of the meta all up. 6 Adeptus Custodi players, 5 Astra Militarum, 5 Imperial Knights, 4 Sisters Battle, Adeptus Sororitas, 3 Admech, 2 Grey Knights. Again, homogenized, but you're still seeing big picks out of certain things. Astra Militarum, massive feature at this tournament. We'll get into that later.
Yep.
Adeptus Custodes, same thing. Custodes are a weird army where they seem to just love teams. Because they're a very consistent rock defender that can get put into armies and can just bully certain matchups. They can also be very comfortably bullied. So they benefit from selection. Knights, Sisters are still good even post-nerf. We're seeing a bit more of a homogenized breakdown, but keep in mind, how many teams are there total, Scotty? I believe
there's 12. 12 teams
12 total.
So with these numbers, bear in mind that, we're seeing 6 Custodes players, but that's across all 12 teams. So we're seeing 50% of teams take Custodes, for example.
So when you're seeing
it shocked me, actually. I was shocked when I saw that. I was like, okay. Custodes.
Like low or high?
I thought it was high.
Really?
I was surprised that half the teams took Custodes. Personally, anyway.
Yeah. And then cutting over into our next segment, Chaos. 30 players total, 31.3% of the meta. Chaos out in force at this tournament. Chaos also, like Imperium, have a lot of different sub-factions. So that can account. Chaos Knights with 7. World Eaters with 7. Thousand Suns with 5. CSM with 4. Death Guard with 4. Chaos Demons with 3. One of the things I want to jump on is I would like to wish all Chaos Knights players a very merry please stop playing at teams tournaments. But they are actually one of the defining teams tournament boogeymen, for lack of a better term. World Eaters are the exact same. Like, World Eaters are a faction that everyone, if you've seen a pairings matrix before, it's a sea of like reds and greens half the time, and they love dancing in between them. Thousand Suns, Pete, you can probably talk to a bit more, because obviously they did get nerfed recently, although from what I've seen online, they're still an army that have a lot of their tricks.
Yeah, so Thousand Suns, I didn't actually think got nerfed hard enough. Now, I love Thousand Suns, but my list, I dropped a Demon Prince that I wasn't superly keen on using. I've added more Cultists, which I love. I don't think they got hit hard enough in the recent the points. So I think they will still be a very high-performing faction, and I think we'll see a lot of Thousand Sun players either blow out or get blown out. I don't think there'll be a middle ground for them. It'll be like 15s to 20s or 1 to like 6-ish.
They are.
They really sit. Sorry, on.
No. Going to your point, they are a bit of a blowout faction one way or another. In my experience, like, they love certain matchups, they don't like certain matchups. So there are armies and teams that you will pair specifically around, because your entire team can be won or lost on whether or not it's a red or a green.
And the point on Thousand Suns as well is that the vibe that I got from the points changes was it was more to hit the units that were giving you the Cabal points and stopping like super high Cabal point counts is I think what their intention was behind that. That's why you didn't really see too much of a hit on non-Cabal contributing units, whereas you saw hits to a lot of characters, you saw hits to rubrics, things like that, because they wanted to, start to chip away at players having 15 to 18 Cabal points to be throwing at their opponents during their rounds.
That's not very many Cabal points.
Yeah. The other thing,
I'm still sitting at 19.
The other thing I'll note is lowering the Cabal point ceiling means that T-Suns becomes a little bit more fragile, because they lose their Cabal points over the game, and there are specific break points where having the difference between like 14 and 13 Cabal points, or I don't know the exact number, but there are some that
massive.
that's a massive deal.
So it means double doom bolt and no double doom bolt.
Correct. So being able to limit them down to those break points easier can also mean the matchup can be less oppressive.
Yep.
I'm with you a bit, Pete. From what I've seen, T-Suns are not going anywhere anytime soon. Moving on. Speaking of FAQ mistakes, Eldari. So there's only 3 Eldari players at the event, 3.1% of the meta, 2 Drakari, and myself playing Eldari. So Drakari-wise, yeah, I know. I wanted to play Drakari, and then Games Workshop raised Drazar by 10 points, and so I am in my act of silent rebellion right now. Man is paying for the sins of 9th edition, and GW know it. But jokes aside, Drakari obviously were meta dominating, especially overseas. Not so much over here from what I saw, but still quite a powerful army, and in teams they are such a good defender. There are so many different units, they have so many different points scoring. There's a lot of tricks to Druk as well, especially the new Sky Splinter Assault, which I believe both Drakari lists are. They
could be. I don't think I've got the stats on that off the top of my head.
I would be pretty shocked if they were real space.
The interesting thing is, though, there's actually starting to be a trend towards real space. Like, there's starting to be a trend back towards them as well. I look at
Do you
Scary, for example, and he's actually pivoted back to real Space Raiders after units in the points changes got hit because they were doing so well in Sky Splinter.
The interesting part from my angle with Drakari, because I played a little bit of Sky Splinter, is Sky Splinter, like Drakari, always relies on overwhelming force. It relies on a certain breakpoint of units and an oppression in trade value. Losing 1 or 2 units in that army actually was already enough to kind of blunt it, because it was actually playing on a fairly generous line. But most of the units you were looking to score points with, like Mandrakes, obviously all your combat units like Incubi went up. So people did have to shift if they wanted to play the more objective control Horde variant into something that actually facilitates real space raid a bit better. Archons going up as well was another big deal. People really didn't want to be playing 3 Archons for combat anymore. People are playing this more as a board control half the time. I still think Druk have a lot of play, but they're a very different army now. They are also very susceptible to losing a couple of core units early and never being able to kind of recover out of the combat spiral.
Yeah. What are your thoughts, Pete, by the way? As well, before we jump on from Drakari, what are your thoughts?
The reason I don't think they did well over here is because we are heavily WTC, right? And I think they can struggle on boards that don't super benefit them, which without this is gonna sound mean, but without top end pilots, they weren't doing well. They were either gonna go really bad or they were just dominating, because the people who were dominating with them understood the core of the army and could pilot the army phenomenally. Where you got other people who just couldn't, they were too fragile, they would just die to a stiff breeze. So finding that that player at that super high skill who can play an army like Drakari, and they do it, it will break so many events. But hitting that player is where I think we struggled with a bit, just because of our meta.
Yep.
They absolutely are the definition of one of those complicated armies that you never want to see one of your big names play.
Yeah.
And yeah, no, I'm really curious to see how they pilot out in teams post nerf. They are still my boys, although again, I'm still a bit salty about certain points. I won't harp on about Eldar too much because I'm the only one playing them, but short answer is Eldar did receive some small points decreases. A few that were less relevant, a couple that have made certain builds potentially hopeful, that we might get into a bit later, but on the whole, they're still a very thin list. Eldar are still, they obviously still have strands, but they're often finding themselves thrust into one of several archetypes. They're very good at building hyper-specific archetypes. They can still flood the board with Bright Lancers. They can still weirdly play a very Wraith-heavy list in teams that is good at just clogging down boards. They can play avatars. I've even heard rumors of Triple Night Spinner still being weird in teams. I'll put it that way. Yeah. Eldar players will throw the kitchen sink at you. Thankfully for this event, there's only one. Red matchup for anyone else at the tournament. Seriously, you don't want it. Moving on to Hivemind, 11 players, 11.5% of the meta, 8 Tyranids,
yep,
and 3 Genestealer Cult. Personally, I'm shocked there's 3 Genestealer Cult, although they and not more, and not more.
I'm not surprised.
And not
shocked.
What?
Not
really?
after the points. They got good buffs and points. We have Eric, who is a die-hard Genestealer fan.
Yep.
We have Ayla, who is pretty much a die-hard Genestealers fan. And Joe is the other player whose sister's just got nerfed and he wanted off.
Yep.
I'm surprised we don't actually have more with the buffs they got. I'm putting that down to people not owning the army.
Yes.
It's an army like that, and it's also an army that requires so much technical skill, similar to Drew.
Yeah.
There are pilots for Genestealer Cult, and then there are then there is that terrible moment where you have to spend like 3 RTTs figuring out how to play Gene Stealer Cult.
That's why Eric does so well on him.
Yep.
He's got that technical side of the game down to a fine art, where even before their nerfs, I think he went undefeated at GT with them.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Which is just mental to me, right? Because they were like a 40% win rate or something. And here's Eric just going, oh, GT, easy guys.
Mm-hmm. He's basically the Australian version of Scary for Drakari, but he is the Australian version for Gene Stealer Cults, basically.
Yeah.
Like, he's a weapon.
Yeah. The other one in... Oh, sorry, you go.
I'm super keen to see how he does this weekend. Because I think he's just going to come down here, have 5 games where he bullies people, and people are going to know, they're still not going to know what GSC does.
That's no, and one of the other things GSC is sitting in a position for is because of the local scene. When was the last time you played against Gene Stealer Cult?
Yeah, no,
like one of the most complex armies in the game to begin with, and if they're an unknown in the meta for most people, that have fun pairing that.
Yeah.
Is all I'm. Yeah.
I think
Tyranids is another fun one, by the way.
Yeah.
I do.
Just to jump on that GSC point, sorry. Taylor was playing GSC. I think he played it at the March Teams tournament, and that was the last time he played it. So he actually, within the New South Wales meta, hasn't been playing that for over 6 months. So
he meta chased P-Sons.
Yes, he
rat
did.
dog.
Who would do that?
I know.
Yeah. But to I know you were about to talk about Tyranids, Jack, but yeah, Tyranids, like, you've got some really strong players in attendance. You've got Rowan Kennett from ACT, who was second at Uprising, like, with Tyranids.
Tyranids.
Like, you know, if I look, because I've got, and I'm going to show chat this because, and everyone, I got my book. This has every single team with every single name and every single faction sitting in it. I'm a physical book kind of guy, and so when I look at it, it's really easy to pull up players. You know, Josh Hines in New South Wales, Tyranids. Who else can we look at that is jumping on Tyranids? A relatively newcomer to the scene, but I know he's been playing a lot within the inner West Hammer scene, is Rue Cavalli. You know, Jim's young bloke, and he's been doing quite well at RTTs from what I've heard.
I also do want to put the name out there, the Snake Man himself, like Snake Meta Definer Palitech.
Yeah.
Who is that?
Oh, I don't know.
Oh, yeah.
Scrub player, honestly. Like,
sounds old to me.
Yeah.
So yeah, there's a lot of names in Tyranids at the moment, which is great.
100%. And again, shifting onto our final faction, we have Xenos, 18 players, 18.8% of the meta. Orcs, 7 players. Necrons, 5. Leagues of Votann, 5. And only 1 Tau.
Yeah. I'm not too surprised on the Tau front, personally, because Tau having 4 detachments, it's their codex, like I've heard from other Tau players, they're relatively stagnant at the minute. Like, you look, Kirby, for example, he's playing a different faction this weekend. Jay, he's playing a different faction this weekend. Like, there's just not a lot of players.
One of the other notable players is busy for the event. Like, most of the Tau local don't exist.
Yeah.
And Tau, as much as they're a notable faction, are also one that, the reason I'm surprised only 1 is because they do like teams. They like teams a lot more than singles, I find. Because they can build a little skewier, but the problem is that codex is so stagnant.
Yes.
Like, the thing is, they normally like that. They've always liked that traditionally. But you try and build a meta flex pick Tau army, and it looks the exact same as your traditional Montcar build.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
There's nothing there. Like, they've already figured that.
Yep.
Leagues is fascinating. Moving on.
Yes. But the thing with Leagues of Votann is they play very, very honest 40k. That there's not really a lot of tricks in them. So what you see basically is what you kind of get with them.
They play honest 40k. They play my least favorite version of honest 40k. If that model is too small to be toughness 6, or Sagittars being T10 or whatever the hell they are. But you're right. They do have tricks. I think that's the important thing with Votann. And Votan's another classic example of, if you haven't played against Votann in a while, just read the rules again, just to be sure. I don't think they've changed much in the edition. They tend to just fluctuate up and down in points. Little variations in lists, but they're also an army where little variations in the player list mean a lot. Like the difference between 2 Terminator bricks and 1, or the difference between heavy Sagittars, heavy Hecatons, is a big deal from a playstyle perspective.
Yeah.
So, a faction worth looking into the individual players list instead of just treating as an overall.
Yep, 100%.
Necrons.
Necrons are very interesting at the meta at the moment, I think. And I'll get actually Pete's take on this one as well. Hypercrypt's starting to dwindle. We're starting to see players shift a little bit to Awakened Dynasty again. There's been some play in the scene of the Obsiessence Phalanx, as well as also Canoptic Court. And yes, Canoptic Court did get hit quite hard, and that's why everyone then pivoted to Hypercrypt. But at the same time, if it's the same thing as Grey Knights, right? If you're constantly figuring out that, yes, I could do all this strat reserve stuff, once players have figured out how to play against Grey Knights, they basically know how to play against Hypercrypt. It's just different. It's a different detachment. It's a different army. The only thing that's different is the units. It's the same style of play, basically.
Yeah.
What are your thoughts,
Hypercrypt
Pete?
Hypercrypt rushes to what our meta is. So I find that our meta, we'll see this in 7 World Eaters and that sort of stuff, is we have a lot of high melee pressure armies, right? And I don't think Hypercrypt does well into that.
No,
because as soon as you start tagging, their stuff, they're buggered.
Yep.
So like, we got 7 World Eaters, 3 Space Wolves, 2 Dark Angels. After Tyranids are fairly fast melee armies. Like, there's a lot of melee pressure
CK
armies
even.
here.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, even CK.
7 orcs.
Like, there's a lot. Yeah, 6 Custodies. Even they can be fast. Like, there's just so much melee pressure that I don't think Hypercrypt, does particularly well, and I think that's why we've seen it started to decline. And things like Canoptic Court and stuff, which are a lot more tankier, start to come back because it's, if you can't kill my 18 race, you can't get to my army, you're not going to win, sort of style.
100%.
Yeah.
At the end of the day, it's still a polarizing matchup with Cano. Like, Canoptic Court can put people in a cage the same way Wolfjail can, and it pairs really well with some of those builds. Because all of a sudden, you can have a team that has a Cano and a Wolfjail, for example, and you can put both up and be like, pick your prison.
Yep. Like,
they can create some interesting pairing dynamics when they buddy up with another team, when they buddy up with another list. Orcs is one I actually want to hold off our thoughts and opinions on until we get to the meta breakdown, because there's a lot of interesting stuff going on with Orcs.
Yeah, for the detachments, for sure.
They actually break apart into detachments in a way that a lot of the other factions haven't, in my mind.
Yeah.
Just a quick faction podium for everyone. Tyranids, obviously with 8 teams, account for 2/3 of the meta. Chaos Knights, Orcs, and World Eaters come in number 2 with 7, 58.33% of our teams. And Custodes come in on 6 teams at 50% of the teams in field.
Yeah.
Importantly, with teams, where we also like to discuss is not only the faction podium, but also how many teams have taken factions from this podium. Every single team has at least one faction from here. So every time you pair up, one of these lists will be there. 4 teams have taken 2 factions. 3 have taken 3. 3 have taken 4. And the best team at the tournament have taken all of them. So brush up on the faction podium.
Yeah.
Make sure you have a plan for these, because they will keep coming up.
Pete, what are your thoughts of the meta overall?
I am quite happy with how balanced it is across all. Like, outside of Tyranids being the highest, we have three armies with 7, and one army with 6. Everything else is fairly balanced in the sort of the 3 to 5, 6 range. Everything's balanced there, which I'm really happy with. Tyranids isn't a surprise because it's a very good toolbox army. They have a lot of play in a lot of different areas, which makes them really good for teams because you need them to do something, they can do it well.
100%.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, I'm quite with how spread it is.
Another quick one that I do want to throw in is Space Marines don't appear on the faction podium, but 9 of the teams are playing Space Marines as the super faction.
Yeah.
So they do artificially appear in more lists, but there is variation to those.
Yeah, there's a lot of
And I think
diversity.
importantly, we made the
Yeah.
decision to split them up because the difference between Wolf Jail and the difference between Dark Angels is huge.
Yeah.
They're ostensibly 2 different factions. So just be aware that Space Marines is something you'll actually see in 75% of the teams. And keep that in mind.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So,
mo-
we're going to move on to the detachments and the allies.
Yeah, I would love to.
All right, let's swap
Do you want to kick us off?
Yeah, for sure. We're gonna jump into a bit of the detachments and the allies, ladies and gentlemen. So they're up on screen for you guys. I know we're going a bit long for this one, but 8-man teams, it kind of warrants it. Thank you so much to everyone in chat for sticking with us. So in terms of detachments, we've just looked at the Codex ones. Yes, I don't have Drakari in there because they do have 2 detachments. That's fine. Tyranids, they've got 3 Invasion Fleet, 2 Crusher Stampedes, 1 Synaptic Nexus, and 1 Vanguard Onslaught. I'm missing a detachment in that count. So there is another detachment floating around in there because I only count 7 there. So I missed it on my count.
I'm going to assume if it's one of the other 2, it's going to be Endless, or it may be a double up on the other one.
I think it's just one of the other ones that's in this list. I don't believe there's any Endless Swarm or Assimilation Swarms.
Yeah, so
Look,
that's all good, but it accounts either way. One of the things, Tyranids is varied, and Tyranids, as you mentioned earlier, is a toolbox faction. What that means is that these lists are actually marketably different. The difference between a Vanguard list and the difference between an Invasion Fleet list is completely different. Crusher Stampede's even another fun one. That and Synaptic Nexus are 2 that you may not have actually played against in a while.
Yep.
So, if you're confused as to what they do, don't just book them down as, oh, it's a Tyranid faction. Have a look. Have a read.
yes, because they do play very differently.
Big bugs go, bro.
Yeah,
Yes,
there's a lot of
yes,
big
they do.
bugs. A lot of big bugs.
There is.
I want to jump across to Orcs.
Yeah,
I'm
I'm
going to let you 2 talk a lot more on Orcs, just because I don't like Orcs in the slightest.
Yeah, I'm just
but
thinking, just as we're going through this, let's rapid fire it a little bit.
Yeah, easy.
All right.
3 Warhorde.
Ben's a bad lad. Taking Dreadmod with a Stomper. Love it.
Oh,
It's crazy, and I'm there for it. I love it.
Send him to me.
Sherman's on Green Tide, which is a lot of Orc bodies. 2 Bully Boys, which is a lot of Mega Armored Knobs with Feel No Pain and War Bosses. They're good at pressure. They got the double War, which can be very scary and can make them very fast. And then the 3 Warhordes are standard sort of Orcs. Bit of tricks. They can be scary. Just give them space and you should be fine. But if you don't, you're going to lose.
So then,
Moving across.
yeah, go for it, Jack.
Yeah, Adeptus Custodes, 5 Shield Host, 1 Talons of the Emperor. 2 we expect to see. Not surprised that there are 5 Shield Host.
And I think when I was looking at them, there's a count of at least 2 Blade Masters per army.
Yeah, doesn't surprise me. Blade Champs are the first couple of 100 points of your Custode army at this point.
It's a charge massive for them.
Yep. The threat of activation is huge as well.
Mm-hmm.
Necron, 1 Cano, 3 Hypercrypt. So take all that beautiful advice we told you about Hypercrypt and study up. For those of you who have been paying attention in class, the Necron monolith is about 6.1 inches long. It's about 9 inches. I can't remember the exact number, but I'm pretty sure it's about a 9-inch screen for the 3-inch deep strike.
Yeah.
You got about 9 inches to play for, so it's a traditional deep strike for a monolith. Keep that in mind. One Cano as well. We already discussed that earlier. Sisters, 2 Bringers, 2 Hallowed Martyrs. This doesn't surprise me in the slightest. Both are very different playstyle-wise. I'm actually surprised that there are 2 Bringers, to be fair, because that was the one that copped a lot of hits.
I think the reason we're seeing Bringers still is because Advance and Shoot on army-wide is just massive when you can guarantee consistency.
Yep.
Things like having 3 Castigators go up and go, cool, I'm going to advance, 17 inches and shoot you, means you can't hide. Having, you go, oh, I'm going to move this, jump out, shoot, and then when you come near me, I'm going to jump back into my emulator like a bitch. That's huge as well. Like, I think that's why we see the Bringers of Flame still around, because the army rule is very good for the play style of the army itself.
And this is another one I'll highlight quickly, as they're 2 very different armies. Hallowed Martyrs is doing some tricky stuff with characters. Be aware of that fact.
Yep.
You think it's easy to kill a Canoness? No. That's a 2.5 turn commitment right there for a 45 point model.
Yep. Just to jump back to jump back to Necrons for a second. Josh Brody's actually running Awakened Dynasty as well for Necrons. So there is that 5th Necron list there too.
There is that spare there.
Yeah.
Cool. CSM, 2 Pax Bound, 2 Renegade Raiders.
Not too surprised by this either.
Renegades does pretty much what Bringers do. It's very fast, it shoots all the time. And Pack Bound is a stat check of damage.
Yep.
It is how much damage can my stuff do to you? If you can't survive it, I win. If you do, then the game sort of gets a bit trickier.
Yep.
It's a math problem versus maneuverability.
Yeah.
Yep. GSC, 2 Host of Ascension, 1 Outrider Claw.
No clue.
So there's a typically Outlander Claws focused around the Atlan Jackals, Ridge Runners, that kind of stuff, which is what Eric's running, and we'll get a bit more into his list. Whereas Host of Ascension is the more all-round style of Genestealer Cult's Detachment.
Space Marines we already discussed before. 1 Salamence Firestorm, 1 Gladius Ultramarines. Dark Angels, double Gladius. Not surprised there. Blood Angels, 2 Liberator. Space Wolves, it's all Wolf Jail all the time. AdMech, it's all Hunter Cohort.
Not surprised.
If you are not familiar with the New South Wales scene and its habit on AdMech, study. Study what it feels like to go second against that list.
Yep. It's another jail list.
It's another jail list. It's also a stat check in a weird, different way. AdMech have a lot of damage, but it's split across a hell of a lot of units.
Yeah.
So, and those units are tougher than you want them to be. Like, start rolling some math into killing 10 Scutari and see how it feels. See if your list can. Vanguard are also really good at... They're the only unit in the game that can make something OC0. For reasons. So keep that in mind.
Yeah.
And OC0, I believe, works the way that it does with actions, if you get reduced down to it. So they can shut down action plays.
Yep.
Until you clear them off the board. Things like that. Nasty, nasty, nasty armies.
For sure. I think
Not surprised.
overall, it's a good detachment spread. We see detachments we expect for a lot of factions. Dark Angels Gladius has come to the forefront a lot. Seeing the spread in some of the higher played factions as well, like Tyranids and Orcs, is not too surprising either. Pete, what do you think?
Like I said before, I'm really glad that it's not one list 12 times in every army, in every team. Like, every team has somewhat different lists, which will make pairings fun, better, and will make it a bit more of a better way to collect data rather than have 12 people run the same list at the same time.
Yeah, for sure.
I think this is a really good way to keep data by going, okay, well, I could do really good into Green Tide and I suck into Bully Boys. And we have multiple times to see that across the weekend.
Yep, for sure. Jumping into allies really quick. Imperial Knights, no surprising, have the most variety. They've got 3 Subductor squads, 2 Breacher squads, 2 Rogue Traders, 1 Sisters of Battle unit, 1 Caladius Assassin, and Watch Captain Artemis for reasons across their allies. But it's not surprising that Imperial Knights have the most allies.
Yeah.
To help flesh them out, particularly all of those bodies in the cheaper stuff, in the Navy Breachers, in the Arbites, Subductors, like those kind of units.
Even Battle Systems are super cheap.
Yeah. Now with
Good
Imperial
cheap
agents.
monkeys.
Yeah.
Yeah. Good cheap action monkeys that if they die it means nothing.
Yeah, basically. Then we get
like,
in.
oh no, you.
Yeah.
On.
Yeah. So then we jump into Custodes. The 2 staple ones, unsurprisingly, the Caladius Assassin and Kyria Draxus, both taken 4 times. Not surprised at all.
The Assassin I love. Vect is so good right now.
Yes.
I don't like Draxus. Everyone's like, oh, you run him like this and this. I'm just like, yeah, whatever. It's Draxus, I don't care.
Yeah.
But,
Draxus can be useful in Custodes though because the double shoot. She pairs onto a team and it is a cute catch-all.
Yeah.
I'm actually surprised. Like, I believe she doesn't see as much play in AdMech anymore because she really benefits from stealing a bunch of keywords from the unit she's attached to.
Yeah. Which is why she benefits so much more in Custodes rather than AdMech, for example.
Yeah.
Jumping over Space Marines, there is one list that has taken both a Caladius and a Calexis Assassin, which we are going to be looking at. It's kind of nuts. Then jumping into the Chaos side of allies, there is Chaos Knights have got a count of 3 units of Nurglings, which is no surprise. 3 units of Plague Bearers, it's a little bit of a surprise. And then 2 Beasts of Nurgle. So they're kicking around. They've got some allies, some extra bodies, much like what Imperial Knights do. We've then got Death Guard.
We'll be discussing the Plague Bearer list, I believe, in one of the teams as well. We'll go into that.
Death Guard, 2 units of Nurglings and a Poxbringer. So not surprised there. 1 unit's just taken some Nurglings and Poxy. And then Thousand Suns, you've got one player who has taken Blue Horrors and a Carnivore. So pretty interesting on that side of things in terms of allies. I mean, it's starting to become a bit more prevalent, but it's where you expect it, right? It's in your Custodes, it's in your Chaos Knights, it's in your Imperial Knights, and a few niche places elsewhere. So I think let's jump into talking about some lists. And first up, and Jack, I'm gonna hold you to not say anything until we get through this for this one, because we're looking at your team. We're looking at Team Aquilian D's Nuts. Yes, that is the team name, and yes, I did spell it wrong on the overlay. I put UQ instead of QU. So we've got the captain is Rowan Kennett. He's running Tyrannid Synaptic Nexus in his list. It is basically Monster Mash. Notably, he's got a Hive Tyrant, Neuro Tyrant, 2 Exocrines, Maliceptor, 2 Norn Emissaries, and 2 Tyrannofexes, like a lot of big bugs. He's got a few bits and pieces elsewhere, like Hormagaunts, the traditional Biovore, and some Raveners. But yeah, it's a lot of big stuff in that list. Then we've got Aaron Warren, who is running Chaos Knight Traitorous Lance. He's got a Knight Rampager, 3 Brigands, an Executioner, 4 Carnivores. He's got a single Beast of Nurgle, 2 units of 3 Nurglings, and 2 units of 10 Plague Bearers. So it really fleshes out that list that allows the Knights to push forward whilst also holding home quite easily. Then
it's also sticky where you don't have to pay for the hands for 4-2, which is nice.
Yes, that is very true as well, Pete. You've got Dave Cottam, who is on the Orc Warhorde. He's got, smattering of good stuff as you'd expect. Snickrot, Gazgull, some Pain Bosses, some Pain Boys, a War Boss, Beast Boss as well. 10 Beast Snaggers, 20 Boys, 2 Trucks, some Death Copters, 10 Flash Kits, 2 units of 10 Gretchen, which is not the smallest amount of Gretchen, the least amount of Gretchen we're going to see. 10 Commandos, 2 units of 10 Knobs, and 5 Storm Boys. I actually think we've seen a lot of Knobs across all the different Orcs lists. They're starting to come a lot more popular. Then we've got Jack's list. So Jack on Eldari Battle Host, he's got a Wayleaper, Fuegan, who's getting a sick model to refresh him. at some point with the new codex. You've Rain in there as well, 10 Storm Guardians, Wave Serpent, 3 Fire Prisms, 5 Striking Scorpions, 2 units of 5 Sweeping Hawks, 10 Harlequins, 2 single War Walkers, and 2 units of 5 Warp Spiders in there. Some traditional Eldar shenanigans, just backed up by 3 Fire Prisms, because angles. I believe the list is titled The Lesson in Geometry. So lots there.
Yeah, that is very correct.
Then you've got Liam Foy sitting on the World Eaters Berserker Warband. He's got Angron, Invocatus, Master of Executioners in there, whilst also having... Let me just get something up, chat, just in case there's any questions about these lists as well. He's got 5 Berserkers, 10 Jackals, a Rhino, 2 units of 3 8-bound, and a unit of 6, and 2 units of 3 Exalted 8-bound, and a Forge Fiend. I'm seeing a lot of prevalence of 8-bound as well in the World Eater lists. They're really, really strong. Then we come to Paul Bampton, who is running the Ashton Militarum Combined Regiment. He's got Gaunt's Ghost, Leontis, a Tempestus Command Squad, 3 Tank Commanders, of course, now that they can order themselves, and despite them being 255 points apiece. 10 Cadians, 3 units of 10 Catachans, so they scout, interestingly enough, so that's the big tech in them. 2 Chimeras, a single Hellhound, 2 units of 3 Ogryn, Scout Sentinel, and then 3 units of 10 Aquilans and 5 Scions.
Yeah,
3-inch deep strike.
Who is shocked on that one?
Yep, definitely not. Then you got Sam Lemon, who's running Adeptus Sororitas Hallowed Martyrs. He's got the Demon Fuge, 2 Canonesses, a Hospitaller, and Palatine, 10 Sacrosants, 2 units of 5 Zephyrum, 10 Novitiates, 3 Castigators, 3 Exorcists, single Mortifier, and a single Immolator. This is not the first time I've seen a build like this. It's not the first time. And Bylemon is also in chat and decided to throw some shade at Greg, who is running a very similar list as well. And just point firing Exorcist at people all day. Then you got Tim Zuba, who's running Adeptus Custode Shield Host. He's got 2 Blade Champions, Valerian, interestingly enough, 4 Custodian Guard, a Sarkana Rhino, 3 units of 5 Wardens, 4 Prosecutors, 2 units of 3 Venatari, 2 units of 4 Witch Seekers, Calidus Assassin, and Inquisitor Draxus. So that's one of the Custodes lists that has got both of those in there. All right. I really like the spread across this team. I think there's some really good threats in terms of top tier lists or lists that really leverage a lot of the meta picks at the moment, but also it asks a lot of questions of the opposing team and forces potentially bad matchups. Pete, really quick, what are your thoughts?
Our studies list I like. The Sisters list is very what I expect to see for a lot of Sisters lists is the triple Cascade, triple Exorcist. It's just horrifying how consistently they can put that out. The Guard, 10 Aquilans is no shocker. They're fantastic for their points, and why wouldn't you take them? There's World Eaters. All World Eaters players will be super heavy on 8-bound now because they're cheap, they're good, they hit hard, they do well in the things. Elder, no one cares, right? But the Orc is what I would assume to a standard Warhorde list be. It's very sort of around that area of Orcs. Rampager, love it. And Rowan, I think, is mad. I think he's going to do really well with that list because it is a list that people don't know how to play into.
Mm-hmm. For sure. All right, Jack, really quick, your thoughts as someone who is a part of the team. So feel free to not give away any team secrets as well.
No. I will keep this pretty short and sweet. Worst Eldar list you've ever seen in your life. Honestly, don't even know what it does. But other than that, we're seeing a lot of very standard. Like, these are very consistent, do what they say on the tin lists. But there's intricacies, as you said, in the pairings. Like, I I'm really keen to see us all pilot. I know a lot of these guys. I think it'll be a fun reunion because I know Rowan, Sam, and I were on the original like Canberran team, and so it's nice to actually play 8-man teams together. But yeah, just pair knights into Eldar, guys. Come on, like I can't kill you. That's it. Final thoughts.
Yep. All right. So moving on to the next team is Rat Dog Taylor and the Freakies. So this is one of the New South Wales teams. It is captained by Alex and Glezos. He's running Tyrannid Vanguard Onslaught. He's got Death Leaper, Neuro Tyrant, Winged Hive Tyrant, Biovore, 2 Lictors, 3 Morlocks, 2 Neuro Lictors, 3 units of 6 Raveners, and 2 Trigons. Now, I will say this about all of this team's list. They have got very funny blurbs at the top of their lists. If you have a BCP sub, I encourage you, go and read them. They are hilarious. You will laugh. As I did a lot this morning as I was doing these lists. But yeah, it's this list from Alex. He's dubbed it the snakes list. So yeah, lots of snakes, which is kind of crazy. Which is Sparto. The best one I would probably say is Alex's, to be fair. Then we've got Arian Fanian. He's running Thousand Suns Cult of Magic. Ironman on disc. With then 3 Infernal Masters, Magnus, Demon Prince with Wings, a single Sorcerer, 4 units of 5 Rubrics, 3 units of 10 Cultists, and 2 units of 3 Zangor Enlightened. So, again, that's a pretty staple, like, allowing the characters to have their units to be able to go and do stuff with. You've then got Ben Tinker, who is the Orcs Dread Mob. He's got a big mech with Shock Attack Gun, Snickrock, Mech, Zogstrog Wart Snagger, which is the named character Beast Snagger guy. 20 Gretchen in a single unit, and then 5 units of a 10. He's got 70 Gretchen, guys.
Yeah, what a mad lad.
I love it.
On top of that, he's got 2 trucks, 3 Death Copters, 10 Flash Kits, 10 Looters, a Stomper, and 2 units of 5 Storm Boys.
Pete, can you put Gretchen in a Stomper?
Yes.
So you can quite literally have the exploding Stomper into Oops All Gretchen?
Yeah, I think you can end up with like 40 Gretchen in a Stomper.
Yeah, cool.
Yeah.
So it's just like, oh no, you're going to charge me? Have Gretchen after Gretchen after Gretchen.
Feed the screen.
But yeah, I love this list.
Yeah.
Seeing a Stomper there makes me so happy. Makes a weekend worth it for me already. Right there.
Yeah. We've then got Kirby, who's running Adeptus Mechanicus Vanguard cohort. He's got 2 Marshals, a Techno-Archaeologist, 10 Rangers, 4 units of 10 Vanguard, 2 Scorpius Dune Riders, a unit of 3 and 2 units of single Ballistari, 3 units of 3 Cerberus Raiders, 10 Infiltrators, and 2 Scorpius Disintegrators. Pretty stock standard from what we've seen Alex run previously, so I'm not surprised that, he's wanting to play Tyranids, palming it off onto someone else who's, Kirby's a very well-versed player. He's been around for a long time, so he's probably able to pick this list up and do quite well with it.
Very good with technical armies as well, and this army demands you know how it functions.
Yeah. Oh, Palisek, you're tempting me now, brother. If we have time, man. I know we're getting towards 10 o'clock, and I want to respect the guy's time, so we'll see how we go.
Read the blurb, Scotty.
If we have time. Then we've got Michael Rutkai's Leagues of Votann Oathband list. He's got 2 Iron Hand Champions, 10 Hearthkin Warriors, 5 Sagittors, 3 units of 5 Sithonian Berserks, 10 Hearthguard, a unit of 3 and 2 units of 6 Hernkin Pioneers, and 10 Jaegers, which are pretty much a staple in every list now for Votann. So again, pretty stock standard Votann list in my opinion. Nathan Princey, he is running World Eaters Berserker Warband. He's running Angron, Invocatus, 2 units of 10 Jackals, 2 units of 5 Khorne Berserkers, a single Rhino, 3 units of 3 8-bound, 2 units of 3 and 1 unit of 6 Exalted 8-bound. So very similar to Liam's list, just a few other tech pieces swapped out. Then we've got Taylor Hill, who is running Gene Stealer Colts, host of Ascension. Now, chat's trying to bully me into doing it. He's got a Benefactus, 2 Biophagus, 2 Kelamorphs, a Nexos, 2 Primus, and a Saboteur as his characters. 2 units of 10 Pistol Acolytes, 3 units of 5 Flamer Acolytes, 3 units of 20 Neophytes, a Goliath Truck, 2 units of 5 Aberrants, and 2 single Ridge Runners. And then we've got Woody Woo, who is taking a Space Wolves Stormlance Task Force. He's got Harold Deathwolf, Logan Grimnar on Storm Rider, 3 Battle Leaders on Thunderwolves, 1 Lord on Thunderwolf, 5 Infiltrators, 5 Scouts, a single unit of 6 and 2 units of 3 Thunderwolf Cav, 5 Wolf Scouts, 2 units of 10 and 1 unit of 5 Wolfen, a Caladius, and a Calexis Assassin. This is a very spicy Wolf Jail list because it basically goes, cool, I'm just not going to take 6 Thunderwolves, and I'm going to put more Wolf into the list, and I'm just going to run it in face still. It basically does the same thing as what Wolf Jail does with minimal reduction in effectiveness. Overall, this is probably one of the teams that, like, I think the 3 teams that I picked are ones to watch out for. Like, I reckon easily any of these teams can take first place or be up on the podium quite easily. So really quick, Jack, what are your thoughts?
One list I want to pull out is Princey's World Eaters. I love this style of World Eaters far more than anything else. I think World Eaters sometimes struggle to trade, and just loading yourself with as many trade units as you can is great. I love the variation on Wolf Jail as well. I love subtle changes in Wolf Jail. People have started to figure out techniques around the 6 Thunderwolves and whatnot, so just run a bit more bare bones. Kirby Hunter Cohort, terrifying. Alex's Snake List. Read what Morlocks and Trigons do. Enough said. T-Sun's pretty standard. Stomper Mob. I just love it. Love it so much. Yeah, just really, really cool lists. And again, a lot of dive buddies in here when you start to look for it. A lot of lists that are going to pair together and go, you're not going to have a good time.
Yeah. Pete, what are your thoughts?
Yeah, I agree with Jack on the World Eaters. Very MSUE. I like it. It trades a lot better into armies that can't deal with the speed or the pressure of them. Gene Stealer Cult still have no idea what they do. Good luck to him. Wolf Jail, he's just reduced some of his bigger units down. Admech, no idea. Stomper, love it. Love everything about it. Ben's a gem. Thousand Suns is very stock standard. Snakes is a very Alex list that you don't see around very often. That is a very technical, very unique list to specifically his playstyle, which is good. And then Hungry with the Votan is just what I assume most people with Votan play right now. I'm surprised there was no land forts in there, but whatever.
Yeah. All right. Cool. So the final team from all bar one player being from Queensland, the Horsemen. The captain is Mr. Eric Lathuris. He's running the Gene Stealer Colts Outland Claw. He's got 3 Kelamorphs, a Saboteur, 6 units of 5 Acolyte Flamers, 5 Flamer Acolytes, 10... now I'm getting confused, guys. 4 units of 10 Neophytes, 2 Goliath Trucks, 2 units of 2 and 1 unit of 1 Ridge Runner, 2 units of 5 Atlan Jackals with the Wolf Quad in there, and then 3 Goliath Rock Grinders. This basically is just... it's fast. It's basically using the trucks and the rock grinders and the speed of the Ridge Runners and Jackals to just maneuver and just cause problems. Which I've seen Scary go up against this in a battle report, so that's why I roughly know what this detachment kind of does. Then we've got Alex Terrison, who's running Adeptus Sororita Spring as a Flame. He's got 2 Canonesses, a Palatine, and the Triumph of St. Catherine. 10 Battle Sisters, 2 Immolators, 3 Arcos, 3 Castigators, 10 Dominions, and 3 Exorcists. I swear, if every Sisters player is bringing 3 Casties and 3 Exorcists, Oh, that's yeah,
Why wouldn't you?
yeah.
Like, honestly, I saw the points go up on the Castigator, and like its release points, cheap.
Mhm.
Its post nerf points, it's still basically the same points as a Predator, give or take.
Yeah.
Um,
I was honestly with this list, I was quite surprised about the inclusion of Triumph, considering it's up to 250 points now from 160.
not in Bringers where it gives you +2 move, +1 advance.
Mm,
Like, the fact that that can sit in your backline, advance forward your backline, advance forward itself, and then give the aura to your frontline units means that entire army gets 3 extra inches of movement.
yeah, it's kind of nuts.
It's
And also, it
Yeah.
gives them an auto 6 miracle.
yeah.
Mhm.
Their first
It
miracle
helps with
dice
the
being a 6
consistency.
means that things like Exorcists can be more consistent. Like, providing consistency to Sisters, an army that already loves consistency. I think Triumph at 250, I think people should be playing it more. I don't think it is too expensive.
Then we've got Brian Lakeland, who is on Drakari Sky Splinter Assault. He's got 3 Archons, Brazar, Urian Rakarth, interestingly enough. Haven't seen him in quite a while. 2 units of 10 Carbolite Warriors, 2 Raiders, 3 Venoms, a Court of the Archon, 2 single Kronos, 2 units of 10 Incubi, a unit of 3 and a unit of 6 Reavers, and 2 units of 5 Scourges. It's a pretty staple Drakari list, I believe.
Urian is useful because he's a relatively tough model with a Feel No Pain and the Phoenix Gem mechanic. So, like a lot of those character units, he's cheap enough. I think he's like 95 points where you can just throw him out and be like, problem.
Yep.
Good way of starting engagements, which Drakari always like.
Yeah.
Commit a unit to go deal with this model.
Mm-hmm.
And then send in the force.
Yep. Then we come to Dave Kerr, who is running Dark Angels Gladius Task Force. This one I was very surprised by, I will be honest. He's got Apothecary Biologus, Azrael, Judiciar, 5 Assault Intercessors, 2 units of 5 Jump Pack Intercessors, 3 units of 5 Deathwing Knights, 6 Eradicators, 6 Inner Circle Champions, Repulsor, 5 Scouts, 3 Suppressors. That's... yeah. Be very wary of that list. That will catch you off guard. If you are not aware of the -1 damage on the Deathwing Knights, be aware of it. Then we jump into Jacob Warren, who has got Chaos Space Marine Renegade Raiders. He's got Cypher, 3 Dark Communes, Hurion Blackheart, 10 Cultists, 4 units of 5 Legionaries, 2 Rhinos, 3 units of the 16 Accursed Occultists, so he's running the AC/DC bricks, 2 units of 3 Bikes, and 2 Predator Destructors. So this is just bodies, stat check, like leveraging the assault keyword off the detachment and stuff like that as well, with the firepower on the Predators. You've then got Josh Woods, who is running a Death Guard Plague Company, 2 Biologus Putrefiers, Terminator Sorcerer, 2 Flower Blight Spawns, Mortarion and Typhus, with 2 units of 10 Plague Marines, a single Rhino, 10 Cultists, 2 Predator Destructors, and 2 units of 6 Death Shroud. I'm surprised there's not 3 units of 6 Death Shroud, considering they're 220 points for 6. And they're tough as all heck to maneuver.
I still think Plague Marines are probably on par with Death Shroud, just with the character support of 5 first and crits on the 5s.
Yep.
I think.
Yeah, you keep going, Pete.
Yeah, I think if Plague Marines get worse and the 2 characters get worse, then you drop them for the 3rd 6-man Death Shroud. But until that happens, I still think Plague Marines have a better play into a lot of the field.
Death Shroud also really benefit from Deep Strike Rapid Ingress.
Yes.
So that 3rd unit can't really gain access to Rapid Ingress effectively, which means that it becomes less beneficial. That 3rd unit is far less beneficial than the first 2.
Yep. Fair. Okay, then we jump over to Josh McGowan, who is running Adeptus Mechanicus Scutari cohort, but a very different one to Kirby's, I'll add. He's got a single Marshal, 2 units of 10 Rangers, a single unit of 10 Vanguard, 2 Scorpius Dune Riders, 3 units of 2 Ballistari, a unit of 10 and 2 units of 5 Taraxi Sterilizers, 3 units of 3 Cerberus Sulfur Hounds instead of the Cerberus Raiders, a single unit of 10 Infiltrators, but 3 units of 10 Rust Stalkers. This
Add Mech Wolf Shell.
Yeah.
If you've not seen how sterilizers move, they can deep strike and fire and fade 12.
Yep.
This army can infiltrate on the front line. One of the other things with AdMech is they have an infiltrating ranger team that can redeploy at the start of the game. So if they win the roll-off, they can scatter that unit across the entire line, lock off all of your infiltrators, and then redeploy it. So they can completely dictate the pace of play with a prison list.
Yes, and Palitech is just corrected me. It is 10 sterilizers, 2 units, 5 Sky Stalkers. Let me just check that I just didn't do. Yes, it is. So it's 2 units, 5 Sky Stalkers, and a single unit of sterilizers. So I got that wrong on my list breakdown, ladies and gentlemen. But yeah, Palitech being a expert AdMech player, able to correct us, which I'm very thankful for. So thanks, man. I was doing these this morning and doing work at the same time. So multitask. Then we've got Michael House, who is running the Orc Bully Boys. He's got Snickerot, 3 War Bosses, 2 Mega Armor War Bosses, Zogsrod, Wart Snagger. Second time we've seen him. 2 units of 10 Boys, 2 Trucks, a Battle Wagon, 20 and 2 units of 10 Gretchen. So 40 Gretchen in this list. 2 units of 5 Mega Knobs, a unit of 10 Knobs, 2 units of 5 Knobs, and a 5 Storm Boys. That's a Bully Boys list.
It's another 30 Gretchens, I reckon.
Just put it up to 70.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. So we'll start with you this time, Pete. What are your just real quick thoughts on this list?
I really like House's Orcs. I feel like it's a very aggressive playstyle Orcs, which I love personally. House is a fantastic player, and he's going to absolutely pilot this to perfection, I think. I think we'll see him with a lot of big scores just because he's a very meticulous player. He's very patient and he knows when to play. AdMech, again, I don't really know what they do. It's just lots of bodies, I feel. I just feel like this will go really well into armies like World Eaters and stuff because you have a lot of infiltrate, which blocks off their scout, which slows the pace down a lot in that match, which World Eaters don't like.
Yeah.
Death Guard, lots of fight first, lots of really hard bodies. Typhus with 6 Death Shroud is stupidly hard to get through. If they go into any combat army, you can be like -2 to hit them, which does stack because one's a ballistic skill modifier and one is a modifier. So you go from hitting on 3s to 5s in Typhus unit and wounding on -1 because Death Shroud at -1 wound. So that can be really tough. I really like it. I love Death Guard. I think this is a fantastically well-rounded list. Renegaders, I have not personally seen the triple ACDC blobs, but I have heard they are a nightmare to move. So this can be this feels like a really good stat checklist where it's just like, if you can't deal with my shitloads of bodies, you're not going to win. Dark Angels, like you said, Deathwing Knights are very hard to get through with the -1. The Inner Circle champs are also hit quite hard too. So it's quite a scary list for any melee armies out there, I feel, especially with the fight first and the Judicia. Whoops. Dark Elder or Drakari, I don't really know what they do. It looks very fast, but it does look like a standard Drakari list. Very fast, very agile, but will die to a stiff breeze. Breeze of Flame, like we said earlier, they'll all have 3 Castigators, they'll all have 3 Exorcists. Why wouldn't you when you can just be like, oh no, I need a lot of shots, here's a 6. And with Catherine there, you can guarantee that every turn. And then I don't even want to start to look at Eric's list. He's a genius. He will play that list to the point where you won't know what's happening, and after the game you still won't know what's happening. He's just going to outplay, I reckon, everyone he comes up against because we don't have much exposure to DSC down here, and he is on the next level as playing. Like, with those two things, people are just going to be confused by what he does and not know how to deal with it.
Yeah, for sure. And just to mention, we do have Eric in chat. So thank you so much for joining us. And Bill, thank you so much for gifting Eric a sub to the channel as well. Really appreciate that, mate. So Jack, what are your quick thoughts?
I will jump in. I've played Eric, I believe, like twice on his Gene Stealer cult, various variations of it, and it's an experience. Easiest matchup of your life. Just go for it. Just throw things at the wall and see what sticks. I don't know, make him sweat at least. Like I'm kind of sick of this whole New South Wales meta thing. Like, let's not give them an easy carpet. Let's not get them too terrified. They don't know what they're up against. But jokes aside, lovely guy. You'll learn so much playing that game. I know I've learned like what feels like 6 games of Warhammer in a single 3-hour session. The Drukhari list is really interesting. I really like that he switched to 2 10-man incubi bricks. That's going to be a bounce in, bounce out. Try and get them back into transports. There's a lot of moving parts, a lot of chaff you can throw out. It will be a mid-board defender, which should benefit in a couple of the missions. And the only other one I can talk is cohort. Treat that like Wolf Jail in your pairings. Put lists into that are not leaving their deployment. That is all I will say.
Yeah. All right. So that's that about wraps us up. And chat has been saying that I should read this thing from Alex. If you guys have time, I will read it, but if not, I'll respect your guys' time and not read it.
No, I want to hear it.
Let's read these
All right.
lists.
So this is from Alex's list. But Alex, I'm holding to you though, to what you said though. So, you know in Alien Romulus where there was a chick played by Dora the Explorer who was pregnant, and the Xenomorph knew it, so it kidnapped her. Eventually, Dora escaped, had some drugs. Can you take methamphetamines? Oh, goodness. And then her 3-month-old mutated inside and ended up being a giant half-breed that, until she died. Well, I'm playing 2 minutes, so I'm all about it. I can't. Oh, I just couldn't some parts of that. Yeah, that hurt. That hurt me a little bit. I'm sorry, Pally. I'm sorry. I just personally couldn't. There's just some parts because I know exactly what it is. Nah, I just, it just whizzed me out a little bit.
No, and that's a great psyop play. If the start of your list is something you don't want to read, then
yeah. All right. Well, I want to thank everyone who has joined us in chat. That is basically where we're going to be wrapping up the preview. But before we do, Pete, do you have any shout outs or any thanks you want to do to any sponsors and stuff for the tournament?
So Daniel Sherry, he's sponsored us and he's done an awesome deal with Terrain. We bought 64 sets from him of everything. So massive shout out to him for helping us out with that. Probably couldn't have done this sort of events without him, to be honest. He will also be providing us with mine and Todd's little thank you gifts to every team that comes. So we're going to give every team pairing cards, engagement token things, and a few little other treats as a thank you for coming down to our first event. Then I also want to thank Greg again for bullying me into doing this. It's been a very interesting experience. Josh from Queensland, he's helped me out a bit with a few of the finer details of things and whatnot. Josh McGowan. I think that'll be all my shout-outs. And to Todd, my other TO, for helping me out.
Yeah. No, awesome. Well, ladies and gentlemen, if you didn't catch us at the start of the stream, this will be up on YouTube. I know we've gone significantly longer than we normally would, but it's 8-man teams, so it's worthwhile jumping into it to talk about it. We will be covering the tournament, all 5 rounds here on the ATWN on both Twitch and YouTube. I've made that decision. We're doing both. We're just going to send it. We'll course correct on the day if we need to. I've got some exciting new tech that I'm keen to show and use on the stream with you guys. So I'm really keen to show not just one stream from the and Alex on chat. Oh goodness. Not just the one table, we'll be able to have a look at who's playing who, and we'll be able to tell you what factions and such are being played on the other tables and such as well. And hopefully, if there's spare time, we'll be able to get, you know, player updates and stuff of how their games went and such to and from, you know, like during the round and such as well. But Pete and Jack, I want to thank you guys for taking the time out of your week to come and hang out and talk about the tournament. I really appreciate it because I know we've been here for a little bit.
Been an absolute pleasure.
Welcome.
But yeah,
Happy
ladies and gentlemen, if you haven't already, make sure you are following us on all of our socials, whether it is Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, TikTok, YouTube. I also want to thank everyone on YouTube who has been helping us over there because we are officially now YouTube partners, which is awesome. So we've now got ad revenue over there, which is great, and memberships and all that fun stuff over there. Also, if you do want to make sure you're notified as to when we are going live for the tournament stream over the weekend, make sure you're in the Discord. It's the best place to know outside of following us on like Instagram and seeing our story go up, or following us here on Twitch, or subscribed over on YouTube. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you so much for joining us. I've been ScottyD. And for Jack and Pete, thank you so much for joining us, and we hope to catch you for the coverage across the weekend. Have a great rest of your morning or afternoon or evening, team. See you then.